We are back. It is college basketball season in a couple weeks. We are within a month. I think we're 4 weeks away. Welcome to the Run Pure Sports College Basketball Preview. We've got arguably the toughest league in the land today. We're here to break down the Big 12. Last two national champions have come from this conference. It's a meat grinder once we get to conference play, Gavin. We've got a guy here who has some experience with Big 12 schools. What's going on, man?
What's going on? Yeah, this is the grown man's league, dude. If you like fast-paced, up and down, offensive-based basketball, don't watch the Big 12. Last year, this year, probably any year going forward. We're going to see some of the best defenses in the country. We're going to have a lot more exciting teams, definitely, than the Pac-12. And we actually got a fair amount of turnover in the Big 12, who's not typically known for a lot of turnover. It's not a heavy one-and-done league. And a lot of guys stay for many years often. So we'll see. Let's dig in.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of interesting storylines to track in this conference, starting with, Kansas, reigning champs. They lose a ton, though. We'll get to that later. Everyone loves TCU. They're getting steamed pretty hard. I like TCU a lot. We'll talk about them. We have year two under Beard at Texas. Frustrating team last year, but actually finished 15th at KenPom despite all the bullshit that was going on there. And then West Virginia finishes last in the conference last season. Gavin was all over that. That was a bold prediction from the show last year. I'm sure we'll have some more this year, but let's dive in, starting with just an awesome team in Baylor. 27-7 last year, ends up 4th at KenPom. Torvik's got them second coming in to the season, Gavin. What do you like about what they did in the offseason? They lose Akinjo, Matthew Mayer, Kendall Brown, and Sohan.
Yeah. If you recall, you also remember Baylor lost 4 of their starters the previous year and then proceeded to storm out of the gates to a 16-0 tune. I think, what was it? Emphatically marked by, remember that drubbing against Villanova where Nova scored it felt like 9 points the entire game, and people were like, holy shit, this team. So, yeah, Scott Drew has cemented himself as, one of the 3 to 5 best program builders in college basketball. So, yeah, it all starts with the backcourt. With these guys, LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, and then the Frosh, Keontae George. We'll see what we got with George. I don't like talking about freshmen too much until we see them, but also bring in 2 guys. They're 2 of my guys that I kind of like in respective spots. I like a Jalen Bridges from West Virginia transfer who will step into kind of the Sohan role. And look, he's not Jeremy Sohan. I'm not saying that. Just settle down. But he's a 6'8", real versatile piece that can shoot or can score from all 3 levels, can rebound, has got some versatility to play with on the defensive end, and I think will be a crucial component for him. And in addition, Caleb Lohner, who, from BYU probably looks a lot more like just a warm body in the Big 12. He's supposedly put on some weight, to help out with some of the physicality of the Big 12, but we'll see. He's still probably going to be like the 7th or 8th guy, on this team. So you can't forget that about Langston Love last year. I mean, sat out the entire last year after being the top 50 guy. So, they certainly got some pieces to be able to score. And yeah, it should be one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah. We saw Chama Chachua go out with that knee injury, which makes them a little thinner in the front court. I think they're going to play, Gavin, like a pretty small team outside of Flo Thamba. So I think that they'll be fun, guard-centric. It's worked for them the last 2 years. They got a perfect roster to play that type of ball. It starts with Adam Flagler, played 30.5 minutes a game last year, actually led this team in scoring. I worry a bit about the peripherals for both him and Cryer. But damn, if they ever do start grabbing some rebounds. I think there's some huge ceiling there. I agree with you on George. Everything that we're reading says that he's going to be a stud, but we'll wait and see what we actually see out of him before we dive in. I agree with you on Bridges. We liked him in certain spots last year. I think he's going to get a good amount of run with this JTT injury. We've seen him not really want to play Thamba a ton. He talked about it down the stretch. I mean, we were playing Thamba in DFS after the injury just because they had to use him, and he had a bunch of games down the stretch that were usable. But Drew has said that he put too much on Thamba's plate late in the year. So I think that he wants Thamba to be like that 18 to 20 minute guy, not the 30 to 33 that we were seeing at the end of the year. Gavin, any thoughts there?
Yeah, JTT is a difference maker, and not having him is going to make them much thinner on the front line. But that being said, Scott Drew is also a pack line guy, so that's one way to step around kind of a lack of length or interior rim protecting. Jalen Bridges going from Bob Huggins, and how Bob Huggins was just crapping all over the team last year. They didn't want to compete, this and that. Go to Scott Drew. That's going to be a nice, cozy landing. Scott Drew's gonna pat you on the butt a little bit, tell you you're a good boy, you love Jesus, and go out and win games, right? I think it's just going to be a much better start for Bridges.
Yeah, same. Team is going to be awesome. They play with decent pace. I'm interested to see like where they start the prices on guys like Flagler, Cryer, George. It is wild. Like, this team was so good last year, and they were hurt, right? Like, Cryer missed a good part of the season. We saw Langston Love not play. I think it'll be interesting to see how Scott Drew divvies up the minutes in the front court, just because he's got so many tools, right? He's got Cryer, Flagler, George, Love. So I think that is what I'm going to be looking at early in the season for Baylor. I think I didn't end up playing that much Baylor last year, Gavin, just because a lot of these good teams are good because they're balanced, right? They've got 4 guys who can go and do it for you any given night.
Last year for them.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to have kind of the same situation where it's going to be tough to pick out these guys. They're going to be expensive because they're on a good freaking team and they're going to score. So this is always the team where, you look at the slate, Gavin, and you're like, man, I probably want a Baylor piece, but they never really project that well just because the team is so damn balanced.
What do you think the 3 guards are going to be a nightmare to figure out in DFS.
Yeah. So any other thoughts here before we move on?
Yeah, I have. You mentioned the tempo. I have noted here. I said I think that they're going to have to speed up without kind of a true, go-to offense initiating point guard like an Akinjo. Last year was the first. So Scott Drew has been at Baylor since 2004. God damn, almost 20 years. So last year was the first year they were inside the top 200 since 2013. Okay. So do they go back to being a slow team? I don't know. We'll see. That's definitely another team that you're going to want to watch tempo of early in the year to see if they regress back to the norm or to see if they kind of sustain, with what they were trying to do last year.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Iowa State. Really interesting team. They went 22-13 last year, finished 43rd at KenPom. Otzelberger, awesome first year. Bart Torvik's got them 47 to start the season. He basically did what he did last year, punts everyone out and brings in a shitload of new guys. So this team loses Brockington, Tyrese Hunter. They're 2 studs from last year. Hunter goes to Texas. We'll talk about him later. But they bring in, 7 guys, something like that. What do you think about the additions in what will be a completely different team outside of Gabe Kalsher?
Yeah, you mentioned not just different team in terms of like the amount of turnover and personnel, but I mean, you're talking about going from Iowa State and Otzelberger specifically. The defense is predicated on aggressively trapping ball screens and forcing turnovers that turn into easy buckets, which was perfect when you had Brockington and Tyrese Hunter. Tyrese Hunter makes your life miserable at the point of attack. Now they got Jaron Holmes, Gabe Kalsher, and Hassan Ward. So Hassan Ward is an interesting piece. Comes in from VCU, who played a really similar type of aggressive pack line, trappy ball screen type of defense, and should fit in extremely well. The thing that you lack in terms of the screen trapping, you also get back on the back end, bringing in maybe the best transfer in the conference, in Osun Osuni from St. Bonaventure. So, I mean, it probably immediately turns into the best rim protector in the conference. I mean, phenomenal feat in terms of being able to guard in space too, which will alleviate some of the deficiencies that they'll face without a Brockington and a Tyrese Hunter up front. But they bring back Kalsher. Obviously, he's a nothing on zero and can shoot a little bit, I guess. Same thing with Grill. So we'll see. It's like, what the hell do you know? I mean, last year they started off 15-0. Then they shit the bed all the way down the conference stretch. Then they go to the Sweet 16. And if not for facing the worst matchup possible in a 3-stud guard lineup in Miami, they might have had a shot at the Elite Eight.
Yeah. So they brought in a bunch of transfers. Do want to note Jeremiah Williams from Temple tore his Achilles last week. So that's a huge loss for a guy who I think was, going to play 25 plus minutes for this team. I think that the Jaron Holmes addition is really cool. We thought he was going to take a little more of a jump than he did. I worry a bit because, Gavin, we play the St. Bonaventure guys for the 38 minutes, right? And going to a new team, new coach, I just don't see him playing that many minutes. And the reason that we're using him is because of the volume of minutes, not because he's like a super efficient fantasy point per minute guy. What do you think about the Holmes addition? And were you tracking the point that I was trying to make there?
Yeah, his minutes aren't going to go up, and his production / usage, especially his efficiency, is not going to go up going from St. Bonaventure to the Big 12. So, yeah, I mean, 0.72 fantasy points per minute is probably his floor or is probably his ceiling, and there's no way he gets 38 minutes a game. But, yeah, I mean, you look at the rest of the lineup, especially with Williams going out, I mean, they're going to fucking need Jaron Holmes. So, yeah. It's probably not going to be a DFS play, but he's going to be crucial for their team.
Yep. I think that this team, I don't know, you're counting on a lot of guys making a step up to a just really tough conference. You got St. Bonnie transfers, you got a VCU transfer, you got an Eastern Kentucky transfer. I like mixing these guys in, but I think that might catch up to him, Gavin, relying on so many guys to make the jump, especially to the Big 12.
And nobody saw the jump that Brockington made last year. I mean, from a role guy at Penn State to an all-conference guy, it was just insane. Nobody even saw that kind of trajectory.
Yeah. Any last thoughts here before we move on to the Jayhawks?
I don't think so. The top 10 turnover rate and top 5 defense masked a ton of inefficiencies on the offensive end that I don't think they're going to be able to lean on this year. So I think it's going to be definitely a couple steps back for Iowa State this year.
Yep, same. We're in lockstep there. Let's go to the national champion, Kansas Jayhawks, 34-6. Holy shit. Third at KenPom, went 14-4 in conference. Torvik's got them 10th to start this season because they lost a lot. They lose Remy Martin. They lose Agbaji. They lose Big Dave McCormick. They lose Christian Brown, and they lost Mitch Lightfoot, Gavin. They lost Mitch Lightfoot, finally. But they bring in the number 4 overall recruiting class. We aren't going to sit here and say that we know everything about these freshmen, but Self, I think, is going to start a couple of them. What do you think about the offseason for KU after the national championship?
Yeah, I think the most maybe one of the 2 most interesting transfers of the entire conference. And it's weird to see, like, KU is a blue blood, one of the best programs in the country, but it just feels weird to see them with a number 4 overall recruiting class. That's not usually like Bill Self's MO. But Bill Self's done it with every size and shape of lineup you could imagine under the sun. So I'm sure he's going to be able to figure it out one way or the other here. I can see how this is a case of this team taking a couple months to kind of gel and for the freshmen to get their feet under them before they kind of start hitting their stride. So yeah, probably a little bit rougher part of the first part of the season, but I think they're still threatening for the Big 12 title towards the end.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you're bringing in 3 5-star guys. Grady Dick, I think, is going to be the shooter. They've got a rim running 5-star freshman center in Ernest Uday. So yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a wait and see team for us. But I mean, the guys that they're bringing back, Jalen Wilson, I think, is just going to just go absolutely nuclear this season, Gavin. He's the best player on the roster, I think. They bring in McCullough, high-level glue guy with upside from Texas Tech. I think that he's going to fit the system really well. And DeJuan Harris, a guy who I think you would agree, both of us kind of were shocked at how well he played down the stretch. Still not really a DFS guy, at least in my eyes. What do you think about the pieces that they are bringing back that we know about?
Yeah, let me throw it back to you. What would you say DeJuan Harris's weakness is, or what's the weaker part of his game?
The weaker part of his game
would you say I'd say the offensive end, which I think is perfect for the fact that we didn't really see Yusufu either at all last year. I think Yusufu could be kind of sneaky here and fitting in as a interesting kind of 6-man spark plug. DeJuan Harris is going to be a great point guard for Bill Self in that he's going to play great on-ball defense. He's going to play a high IQ version of basketball. He's not going to turn the ball over, and Self knows what he's going to get from him every night.
He's not going to lose the game for you.
No, exactly. And Jalen Wilson might have been the best player on the team last year. I will say it. I'll say it. Yeah, Ochai Agbaji was good. Yeah, he got drafted. Jalen Wilson is so fucking good. Like, when we were banging the drum for this guy we're trying to tell Bill Self to play this guy. He finally does, and sure enough, turns out to be one of the best players in the conference. What stuck out to me was Jalen Wilson and McCullough together. Brother, you could run some wild lineups with these guys. Like, you want to run, Wilson at the 4, McCullough at the 5, or vice versa. You want to run them as 4 and 5. You want to run them as 3 and 4s with the Frosh center. Like, there's a lot of different routes you can go with this lineup, which is part of why I feel like Bill Self will be all right in the end. It just might take a while to figure out what's the exact combination that gets him the tick.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun team. I love the idea of them playing small and just out-athleting everyone else.
100%. Yusufu in there too, with a Wilson and McCullough at the 4 and the 5, and then you throw in a DeJuan Harris and maybe a Dick for shooting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think this team's going to be really good again, obviously. We'll see how they start. Per usual, they have just a hellish non-conference. We'll be seeing this team, Gavin, in 5 weeks play Duke. That should be just awesome. But yeah, just a tough non-conference schedule as usual. Any other thoughts on Kansas here? We didn't mention KJ Adams. We saw him play a little bit down the stretch. He was a top 70 guy last year, I think.
I like him, man, but he just
Yeah.
got log jammed by the freshmen.
Yeah.
So it's
So,
probably going to
so
be another year for him.
yeah. So I think he's a guy to keep the light on for Self in the almanac that came out. He has some quotes actually about using him as the small ball 5 and playing McCullough at the 3, Wilson at the 4, and Adams at the 5. I think that would be interesting too.
My
'Cause
take on Adams is he's in the portal by the end of the year.
You think so? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I could see that just because of the makeup of this roster, and it's like, hey, you're a top 75 guy, but we're bringing in 3 top 20 guys. So yeah, agree there. Any last thoughts on this team? Awesome team.
Yeah, negative.
All right, let's go to Kansas State. They finished 14-17 last year, but 61st at Ken Palm. I feel like this team lost just a shitload of close games. They open it up 42nd at Torvik, so he thinks there's some improvement there. They had an interesting offseason, so they lose Nigel Pack to the NIL.
To the NIL.
They lose Davion Bradford, Mark Smith, and Mike McGurl. Selton Miguel's also gone. So a bunch of losses, but I don't know. I like what they brought in. We'll see how much. So they bring in Keontae Johnson. I think we have to start there, right?
Yeah.
From Florida. What do you think about the addition of him? They add Desi Sills, who I didn't know he had any eligibility left. They have the number 1 JUCO transfer and Gasson from Virginia Tech, who is a bench piece, but I think he might play more here. What do you think?
Yeah, so starting with Key Johnson, man, holy Jesus. Preseason SEC player of the year, and then collapses on the floor and with some big heart issues and has been out for 2 years. Dude, if he plays I can't remember if it was 10 games or 14 games or something like that. I mean, he forfeits like a multi-million-dollar insurance policy. So if he does come back to play, I got to think that he feels really good about his long-term bill of health. Obviously hope that to be the case. He's a phenomenal freaking player and can form, I think, inarguably the best 1-2 punch in the entire conference in Noel and Key Johnson if he's healthy. If he runs into issues, this team is dead on arrival, just dead. So keep that in mind. That being said, he also has the upside to literally be the conference player of the year if things fall right. So it's really interesting. They bring back like an Ish Massoud. I mean, they bring in a lot of transfers who I think are just fucking mediocre at best. Like,
look at the stats on this JUCO guy.
Take some of the burden off of. So the number 2 JUCO guy went to Washington last year. I can't remember his name, something Langston or whatever. Number 2 JUCO guy can't even crack Washington's lineup last year. So I mean, we'll see with these JUCO guys. They're kind of like freshmen, man. You never know what you get with them until you put them in hot water.
The rates are insane from the JUCO guy.
Yeah, 2.65 fantasy is not even a real figure.
Noel, one of my favorite players in the country, I think. He was freaking awesome last year. One of the rare guys, Gavin, with double-double threat for assists like every single game.
He's going to throw steals on there as well.
Yeah. So last note on Keontae. So their new coach is Jerome Tang, who was with Baylor for a long time as an assistant.
Scott Drew's right-hand man.
Yeah. And so they went through a similar thing with Jared Butler. Remember, he had to manage the heart condition too.
And the guy before Butler, it was
Isaiah
Austin.
Yeah. So Tang has talked about how he's gone through this. He feels comfortable with something like managing this situation. So that makes me feel a little better, and I think it's part of why he transferred there. Gavin, what else do we like on this team? I think the ceiling is high, especially if Key plays. Noel is, I mean, I have him on my first team all conference. I think he's arguably the best point guard in the conference. The little fella, he's like 5'7" or something. I mean, he exceeded my expectations last year. What do you think about him and then the rest of the roster here?
Yeah, man, he's a midget, but he can get downhill in a hurry. Like, yeah, he's sick. I mean, he should challenge for first team all conference if for no other reason than from a sheer volume perspective. Like, I just see him he's just going to have a usage rate that should be at worst top 3 in the conference. Like, because a lot of other teams are much more balanced, especially in the Big 12, versus Kansas State is much more all in on Noble. So yeah, I mean, he's top of the line point guard for sure.
Yep, and I like the Sills addition, just kind of a glue guy.
Bro, Desi Sills sucks.
I like him for the team, right? You know, I think he's a decent.
I like the fact that he can put a uniform on and just stand next to Noel and Key Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. He can clean up some assists from Noel. Anything else on this roster? I think the first year with Tang, I think he just kind of gives the keys to Noel, plays him a ton of minutes, and figures it out around Noel and Key Johnson. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Tang long term. I think this is going to be a struggle out the gate for him.
Yeah.
It's just such a drop off after those two guys. I mean, they may have 2 of the 5 best players in the conference. Like there's a real scenario at the end of the year where Noel and Key Johnson are both first team all conference, and K-State is in the bottom half of the conference.
Yeah, I think, and to kind of bring that to light, going through the almanac, he's got quotes. And when the head coach is calling guys who played 27 minutes in an entire season an X factor, might have some issues with depth.
Yeah.
So that's my last note there. Anything else from you on K-State?
Negative.
All right, let's go to OU. Team was 19-16, but 30th at KenPom last year. Torvik's got them 33rd to start this season. They played pretty slow last year, but they bring in some big guns in the transfer portal. They don't really lose anything. I mean, they lost Harkless, Goldwire, and your boy Ethan Charjois, I think it is, right?
Shagwa.
Shagwa, that's right. You always correct me. But they bring in, after last year, bringing in multiple impact transfers, I think that they brought in maybe their 2 highest usage guys, maybe 2 of their top 3 or 4. In what do you think about what they did in the offseason here?
Yeah, with Osuni, the biggest, conference transfer in Grant Sherfield. This is a team that lost pretty much their entire backcourt, was 344th nationally in offensive turnover rate. So Sherfield is just a massive get for him in that department. Now, I question a little bit of the scheme fit. I'm not going to lie with Sherfield going from Nevada to Porter Moser. Like, I don't know if you can find 2 offensive styles more disparate than Steve Alford and Porter Moser. Like Alford's just going to YOLO it, and Porter Moser is going to draw up a new play every single time down the offensive end. But yeah, Joe Bamisil, your boy Joe Bamisil too. Former VT guy who now comes from GW. At least he's had like some D1 experience in the past. So I at least like that fact versus somebody who's just, up transferring for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And then, those are mostly the new guys. You got Tanner Groves comes back. There's word that he's putting on weight in the offseason to handle some of the physicality because he was breaking down, I think, a little bit towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
25 minutes, you kind of hope that he would play more than that, especially when a Jalen Hill is playing 30. And I think we see that, Tanner Groves taking the next step up, and it's kind of an interesting piece, I think, in the Big 12, being an inside-out big. versus a lot of teams who are going to run a pack line, and force you to shoot away from the basket. And Baylor and Texas, and that random Texas Tech team isn't that bad in defense either. So yeah, they got some interesting pieces here. I think definitely should be. But look, this team is the epitome of the Big 12. You finished 30th in KenPom, you missed the tournament. Like,
I know.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Sherfield and Bamasiel additions are huge. I think that their backcourt's going to be much better. We have here OU 344th in offensive turnover rate last season. Gavin, that is pathetic.
Especially as how slow as they play too. It's a half-court team. It's not like they're running and gunning, and they'll take some of the turnovers with how many easy buckets they're going to generate in transition. No, it's like slow, and they're still throwing the ball away.
Yeah. Last note on Bamasiel, he was a 4-star guy coming into Tech, Gavin, so I don't worry as much. And from what I remember last season, he played well in their big games, against the tougher competition. So I don't have that much concern there for him. I like the starting 5 here, Gavin. We haven't mentioned CJ Noland. I'll let you talk about him. But yeah, I mean, Groves, Sherfield, Bamasiel, they have a couple freshmen that I think are going to play early. And then Noland, I mean, it just shows, Gavin, how tough the Big 12 is to crack rotations as a freshman. CJ Noland was on the first team all freshman team, and he played 12 minutes a game,
KJ Adams was on the all Big 12 freshman team and scored 1 point a game. One.
But yeah,
one more point than you and I scored in the Big 12 this year.
Right. Yeah, so it's tough to crack these rotations in this conference as a young kid. Nolan, though, I know you like him, shot 44% from 3 last year. Why don't you talk about him a bit, and then any last thoughts on OU?
Yeah, on a pretty good sample size. I mean, 44%, that's going to be extremely helpful for this team, especially when you got someone like a Tanner Groves who can also space it at the 5. I mean, I just think spacing is going to be much better on this team this year, and the offense will be able to execute much more efficiently with more spacing than they were able to accomplish last year with Goldwire and Harkless, who couldn't really shoot for dick from outside. So Nolan's obviously going to alleviate that. He's probably, I'd say the 3rd guy behind Sherfield and Bamasiel in the backcourt. But he's going to be a good spark plug off the bench and be able to shoot.
Yeah. Do you think they start him, or do you think they use him as like a?
I think they go with the vet and Bamasiel, probably Porter Moser. It's going to be, I think, Sherfield, Bamasiel, the 2 Groves, and Jalen Hill.
Yeah, same. All right. That's all I had on OU. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, let's go to your school here. Oklahoma State, 15-15, 34 at KenPom. Wild conference. Torvik's got them 42nd to start the season. This team loses a lot. They lost Likely. They lost Bryce Williams, Keelan Boone, Alexander Moncrief is gone, and Rondell Walker transferred. But they bring back pieces that we like. This team, tough in DFS because he likes to run a huge rotation. I don't know. Yeah, 11 players, Gavin, averaged over 10 minutes per game last year.
What's Leonard Hamilton to shame?
Yeah, right. They don't really bring in that much. They have like a top 100 wing and a couple up transfers from High Point and Texas State. What do you think about the turnover in the offseason here?
Yeah, look, you're losing a decent amount in Ice Likely, who had been there for 9 years, and the Williams, and then Alexander Moncrief gave you a lot of defensive versatility that Boynton kind of loved to deploy. But that being said, I think the team is going to be much more balanced, right? This was an abortion of an offensive team, but they were extremely good defensively. They made your life a living hell. Boynton runs out a 5-athlete, switch 1 through 4 pretty much all the time, and makes life pretty miserable for you. So I think the team will just look a lot more balanced. They're not going to be as bad offensively. They're not going to be as elite defensively, but at least they'll be able to put the ball in the bucket, I think, at a little bit better rate this year.
Yeah. So reading the almanac, Coach Boynton talked basically about the guys who left the program once they got that postseason ban. He was like, those are the guys who just kind of wanted to score for themselves and not really play team ball. So I'll be interested to see how they start the season. I really like their top three, Gavin, in Anderson, Bryce Thompson, and Musa Cisse. I think all three of those guys have really good ceilings if they get the minutes. The two transfers are both shooters. He talked about wanting to add shooting, so he brings in Asbury, 42% and 38% from three at Texas State on 4.8 and 5.7 attempts per game. So, I mean, he knows that they didn't shoot it well enough last year, 198th in 3-point percentage. And the issue, Gavin, is that their two best players, Avery Anderson and Bryce Thompson, neither of them can really shoot it well, or at least they didn't last year. I think that Anderson might have some upside, but 32% and 29% from three from your two highest usage guys. I think that is a bit concerning. What do you think there? And then what do you think about the front court? I think Cisse could really break out here.
God, he was the defensive player of the year last year in the conference. Like,
yeah,
man, it just felt like he had a quiet-ish year because he only played 20 minutes a game, like, because he fell in the middle of that freaking crazy rotation. Like,
he was really good at the end of the season. I have here his last 7 games averaged 10 and 10 and 2.6 blocks.
Yeah. I mean, he was like, he's a former top 25 guy, fell out of the good graces of Memphis and is finding a much better fit. Like, I mean, the guy's an animal on the defensive end, and we kind of, haven't spoken to him enough. And I think it does kind of work well that Anderson and Thompson are a little bit more offensive minded, whereas Cisse is, the defensive player of the year in the conference, can kind of anchor things on the back end. So, yeah, the guy's an absolute machine. And so Cisse will be able to still mask, I think, even the steps back that they take on the defensive end.
Yeah. Any thoughts about the rest of the roster? We got Caleb Boone back, super high block rate, but I don't think he's going to get the minutes for us to be able to use him. And then the other transfer is John Michael Wright, career 35% guy at High Point on almost 6 attempts a game. So I think that, I mean, adding those, they just really need shooting so badly. So I think they need at least one of those transfers to hit.
Yeah, even like their current director of player development was the point guard when I was there, and like he was like a 5'7" little white kid who could just chuck it from 46 feet. They've usually had shooters in the past, kind of up until Boynton came into the fold. So it's good to see him going back and kind of they desperately needed some shooters for some spacing in this offense, for the love of God.
Yep. All right. Anything else on this team?
Don't think so. I like him a lot more from a balance standpoint. So we'll see what we got. See what we got with him.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Bryce Thompson can add on his peripherals. I think he's a upside guy there. Let's go to a team that we like. I know a lot of people like TCU. 21-13 last year, 26 at KenPom. Wow. Torvik not as high on TCU as everyone else. He's got them 85th, Gavin. We saw them have the fun run in the tournament. Nope, I am wrong on TCU. He's got them 26. That was
26th in KenPom, and pretty much kind of a fluky quasi backcourt not called foul that Arizona gets dunked from beating Arizona in the tournament. Like,
yeah. So this team, the national guys are high on them because I have their key losses as none. They don't lose anything. They bring in Rondell Walker from Oklahoma State. What are your overall thoughts on the roster? It looks pretty damn deep.
Yeah, I wish they weren't as trendy as they are, because God, this team is sick. Like, this is definitely the most interesting team to me. in the conference. Like, Mike Miles goes through the pre-draft process. Teams worry a little bit about his shooting percentage, given I think he actually took a step back from three last year. After being 35% his freshman year, he shoots like right around 30. So he's coming back, and I'm sure working on that, specifically. And if he can improve that, God, he's going to be, probably him and Noel is the best point guard in the conference.
Yeah.
And same thing, Lampkin, really started to break out last year, like similar to what we were talking about with Umar Ballo in the Pac-12. Like, he's kind of the Sonogo body and just can literally out-physical his way to a double-double when given the minutes. And then they bring back kind of all their key wings. Damian Baugh, Chuck O'Bannon, and Emmanuel Miller was a stud at A&M kind of before he came over. And, is Jamie Dixon's probably the most underrated coach in the conference, if not the entire nation. Like, this team has all the pieces they need to be as lethal as they need to in the Big 12 in a year where we worry about Kansas, with all their turnover.
Yep.
Who knows what the hell we're going to get from Texas. Like, Texas Tech we're going to talk about them in a little bit. They're in for it. And then, Baylor still got plenty of turnover themselves. It wouldn't be crazy to say this team wins the Big 12, like, in all honesty. That's the kind of ceiling they have. Yeah,
I love the ceiling. They need to shoot it better, though, Gavin. 321st from three. That was our issue with them last year, and they didn't address that in the portal. I was really hoping that they would bring in a shooter or two, but I get it. Like, it's tough when you've got guys in their roles and, everything's kind of locked in. And then you say, oh, I'm going to bring in this other guy because you can't shoot it, as far as team chemistry goes. So, we've been talking about fantasy points per minute on this show a lot. You can really tell how deep and good this team is. All of their starters are like 0.79 or higher. They don't have like there's no wind sprinters in their starting five. All just solid players. I think the pace and the fact that this team, I think there's a bit of Baylor type concern here, Gavin, for DFS, as far as guys kind of eating into each other and having, 4 or 5 good players on the court all at once. I think we're going to be able to play Lampkin, though, for sure. But as far as like the Millers and the Baws of this world, don't you always feel like they're priced correctly?
Yeah, Miles will probably be like 9K from the jump. Lampkin will be, probably 7K. And then, if you look outside those and where do you go for the next 3, God, you're kind of – it's going to be hard to figure out who's the next go-to third scorer or third usage option in that team.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a whack-a-mole type of situation for DFS, but a really fun team in real life. Awesome defensively last year. They were 15th at KenPom in adjusted defensive efficiency.
Number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country.
Yep.
That can fix a lot of shooting woes when you get second try at it.
Yep. So any other thoughts here on TCU? I really like this team. I think I like you said, I was hoping that not everyone else was on them because I'm really high on them.
Yeah. No, nothing more to add.
Cool. Well, let's go to our favorite team in the country, Texas, 22-12. 22-12 last season. Frustrating year. 15th at KenPom, though. They open the season 7th at Bart Torvik, Gavin. I think we could probably do an entire show on what happened with this team last year. What are your overall thoughts on what happened last year? Let's start there.
Yeah, and Chris Beard has never had an issue in the past in terms of high turnover rosters and getting pieces to fit together. And I don't think that was even the issue. You go back to last year, dude, there were like 4 guys on the team who had major conflicts surrounding the team at one point, okay? Remember when Marcus Carr was about to transfer?
Yeah.
And somehow stayed and then started playing 32 minutes? Like, weird, Chris Beard. Okay, Trey Mitchell. Trey Mitchell had his issues, left the team like midway through the year. Then he had the Andrew Jones and Courtney Ramey saga, like where they're about to go to blows on the court.
Dylan Dessou was hurt.
Mess last year, dude. A mess. The offense was so slow and so inept. They didn't have any shooters or pieces to execute in the half court. Beard would not run with one of the best point guards in the country. And when you're forced to shoot outside in the Big 12, like I said, with all those pack line defenses, you're going to run into issues, and Beard never made adjustments. And so, yeah, it was just kind of like a series of unfortunate events for those guys, one after the other. Now, that being said, they were still, a bucket or two away from beating Purdue to advance. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so let's talk about that roster turnover. So they lose Ramey, they lose Andrew Jones, they lose Trey Mitchell, and I'm not sure how they're going to get over the loss of Devin Askew. But they bring in the number 3 recruiting class in the country here, Gavin. Headlined by Dylan Mitchell. He's the number 5 overall player, wing guy. And they get Tyrese Hunter from Iowa State, who is just an awesome pickup. I think that this team, kind of like, was it Kansas we were talking about? I think that this team can play a really fun starting 5, with Bishop as like I wouldn't call it like small ball 5 because Bishop is 6'7", but yeah, I mean, I think that they can field a really athletic starting 5 that's going to give teams issues. You start Carr, Hunter, Timmy Allen, the freshman, and Bishop. I think you've got 5 guys who can really hurt you all on the court at the same time.
Was that a question?
No, I was just making a statement.
I think, Mitchell, it sounds like Mitchell is more of a nasty defender. He seems kind of like a Sohan mold. And then Arterio Morris seems like he's more of the offensive guy. So, yeah, I mean, how do you fit Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter in the same back? Do you play Tyrese Hunter off the ball?
I don't know.
Do you play Marcus Hunter? I mean, only one of them can dribble the ball at one time. Like, it's a really weird fit, even as much as Hunter can cover up as many of Carr's defensive inefficiencies and Carr covers up Hunter's offensive inefficiencies. It's just a weird pairing.
I think they can both kind of share the role. I was kind of looking at it as sometimes it's good to have more than one guy who can handle the ball, I'm not sure how much Marcus Carr is going to like that. But yeah, I mean, this team is it's really good again. The roster.
I mean, awesome. Like, there's an argument to be made where that Tyrese Hunter is the best on-ball defender in the nation.
Yeah, this team's going to be tough as shit to score on.
Like Chris Beard must have just been wetting his pants when this guy decided to transfer. But he also got Marcus Carr. What the hell are you going to do with both of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, and then Timmy Allen had an quietly awesome year.
Another guy who can't shoot.
Should be the focal point of the offense again. He was awesome down the stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, the team. I'm going to say this one time. The team played really well when they played their good guys 35 minutes a game. Let's say
that.
I'm interested to see what they get out of Dessou this year, Gavin. He had off-season surgery last year. Before the season, Beard in the Almanac was talking about, I'm not sure if you saw that, he didn't start practicing until like November. And then the doctors basically gave him a strict minutes restriction that we didn't know about. So he said that he's full go here now. And the last time we saw Dylan Dessou, he was just wrecking the SEC. He only played 10 minutes a game last year, but the per minute stuff is really, really good for him. I like the Dessou Bishop combo in the front court. What do you think about that?
What would you say if I told you Dessou was the second best shooter on this team behind Marcus Carr?
I would say that they have some of the same issues that they did last year.
What did Dessous shoot his sophomore year at Vandy from 3?
I have no idea, but I'll guess like
37%.
Yeah.
At over a attempt per game like that on a good sample size like this.
Yeah.
Bro. Don't worry. I'll get to Dessous later. But yeah, I still have the same issues with this team. If you can't find people who are going to hit shots from the outside, and they just lost Andrew Jones and Courtney Ramey, two of the guys, probably the two best ball shooters they had.
The only two guys who
a lot of problems.
Yeah. I mean, the roster is loaded, but just like TCU, like, are they going to make jump shots?
And they don't rebound like TCU. So, yeah, you miss shots, you don't get it back a lot more when you're Texas.
Yeah. So, hoping that the rotation stuff is gone and a thing of the past. I think they probably, like, in the right world, Gavin, this team goes like 7 deep and all these guys just fucking crush, right? Because their top 5 is, I mean, talent wise, a top 10 team, right? Carr, Hunter, Allen, Dessous, Bishop. That starting five,
yeah, like
it's gnarly, right? And then you've got the bench pieces as the freshmen, so we'll see what happens with them. They do bring in JSURab Rice. He's on the all-conference name team. Comes in from a winning program. I think he'll be a bench piece here too. But yeah, I think I want to say the ceiling is high, but I have the same issues as TCU. I did like, are they going to hit any jump shots? And the tempo doesn't help with that either. Hopefully they speed up. They were 336 in tempo last year, Gavin. Any thoughts on that? And then final thoughts on Texas here.
Yeah, they got to run to unlock some of these guys' potential, like a Bishop, like a Carr and Hunter. I mean, these guys got to play in transition at least a couple times a game, Chris. Like, don't be afraid.
I know.
I think Texas, God, it's like they have to take a step forward. I mean, just from what a malfunction last year was. Like, I think roles are much more clear and defined this year. And I think there's a lot less uncertainty up in the air in terms of roles, chemistry. I think this team takes a step forward, but don't want to go too far because I'm so just pissed off at Chris Beard in particular.
So their non-conference is pretty nasty. So the day after we have the games in Indy, guess who they host? Gonzaga. Yeah. That is going to be a banger there. They also play Creighton, Illinois, and Stanford in the non-conference. So we'll know early on this.
Creighton, rotation. I heard that's the best college basketball team in the last 25 years.
We'll get to them next week. For now, let's go to Texas Tech, unless you have anything else on Texas.
Nope.
All right, cool. Texas Tech, what an awesome season last year, 27-10. They finished 7th at Ken Pom. Torvik's got them 25th to start this season. They lose McCullough. They lose TJ Shannon. They lose Adonis Arms, who was awesome for them last year. They lose Bryson Williams, Davion Warren, and your boy Marcus Santos Silva is no longer around. They bring in a lot of freshmen, a couple top 100 guys, and their big transfer pickup was Fardaz Amack, I think is how you say his name, from Utah Valley, who just absolutely smashed there. But he broke his foot 2 weeks ago, and everything I'm reading, it's saying like Christmas for him. So that is just a massive loss. I
think he might have had a season-ending knee injury the year before too, if I'm not mistaken. I would need to check on that, but
yeah. But I mean, Adams was basically counting on him to be an anchor and be a big piece of this team. They also bring in Davion Harmon from Oregon, meh, and Kerwin Watton from UNC, meh.
Yeah.
What do you think about the offseason that they had here?
Dude, I mean, they lose like everybody except for O'Banner. Yep. I mean, Holy G. Now, I'll tell you what, if you've been in the business of fading Mark Adams, you're probably giving blowjobs under the highway. You're so poor. And I don't want to be in that business, but dude,
This is a way different team, man.
This team is not good. Like
the roster's not good. Let's say that. I mean,
one of the last two teams in the Big 12. I'll go there. I'll say it. One of the last place or second to last. I'll say it.
Oh,
you got a backcourt of Davion Harmon and Kerwin Walton. Mark Adams says that Davion Harmon is the closest thing he's seen to a point guard since 2018. Davion Harmon was 2 assists and 1.5 turnovers a game. That's not a point guard.
In 31 minutes a game, too. Yeah, I mean,
if O'Banner is not a first-team all-conference world beater, and he might not even get 30 minutes the way that Mark Adams goes to the rotations. I mean, this team is bad. Bad.
Mark Adams in the almanac points out Jalen Tyson as their key piece.
Yeah.
He played.
He was so key. He got 7 minutes a game last year.
I don't even remember him being.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah. So, the backcourt is horrendous. Walton couldn't crack the rotation at UNC for a reason, you know. He can shoot it from deep. Actually, Walton is like a guy that Texas needs, you know, off the bench. But he's going to start here. They are going to start, Gavin, Harmon, Jalen Tyson, Kerwin Walton, O'Banner, and it was supposed to be AMAC, but I don't know who they're going to start at the 5 here.
It's either they'll play Bacho at the 5 or they'll small ball 5 O'Banner because Mark Adams is the pack line guy, and you don't really need height with pack line.
I'm excited for O'Banner. I mean, how does he not smash here? As far as, you know, usage and DFS, I think O'Banner is going to be awesome.
If he only plays 26 minutes a game, Mark Adams may as well not show up to a game this year. Texas Tech is dead on arrival if he plays 26 minutes a game.
Torvik has 82% of the minutes, which would be like 32. So if he plays 82% of the minutes, he is going to absolutely smash. So we love him, but outside of him, do you like anything else on this team?
No.
Yeah.
I like Mark Adams, but he doesn't play. So
we can't roster him. They do bring in Demorian Williams, shot 40% from 3 at Gardner-Webb.
Against a bunch of 5'7" guards. Now he's going to the Big 12. I'm sure that goes swimmingly.
Yeah. So fantasy point per minute, we have referenced a lot on this show. Have you taken a peek at Kerwin Walton's from last year? I think it's the lowest I've seen on our 2 shows so far. 0.46.
Yeah, usually like below 0.6 is wind sprinting. I mean, this man is below 0.5. Like there's that. And Kerwin Walton couldn't crack the starting lineup before Hubert Davis realized that he only needed to play 6 guys.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. I think this team's in trouble. I don't see a top 25 team here. Unless like the freshmen are awesome. So I will say they bring in 3 top 100 guys. So, you know, we'll see what Fisher
Texas Tech, Iowa State, 2 worst teams in the conference.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that would be surprising. No. Because we have one more team left. And they're
no. I know. I'm well aware.
All right. Well, let's go to West Virginia. I'm with you on Texas Tech, though. I'm going to be low on them. West Virginia was the team that we were both really low on last year. And they go 16-17, 66 at KenPom, last in the conference. So we nailed that one. Good job, Gavin. Torvik's got them 32nd to start this year, which would be a huge jump from where they ended last season. They had what looks like a productive offseason here. Lots of losses on their team. It's basically an entirely new team here. They lose Sean McNeil. They lose Jalen Bridges, who we talked about earlier. They lose Taz Sherman. I probably should have started with him. And Gabe O is mercifully gone. But they bring in a ton. What do you think about what they brought in? And why don't you list those guys?
Yeah, I think few coaches were more vocal with their displeasure over their teams from last year. And I mean, Huggins was just like, these guys didn't compete. I just fucking pussies, this and that. Like,
Yeah, those quotes were wild right there.
yeah, well, we'll get back to those quotes when we start talking about the lineup. But yeah, it looks like you bring in more kind of Bob Huggins-ish type guys. Sean McNeil and Taz Sherman were at West Virginia for 7 years and didn't play 30 seconds of defense in those 7 combined years. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I could see where Huggy is kind of pissed off and just like, fuck it, clean house. I'd rather start over. And I can still trust him with kind of the guys that he has more than I think I could trust some of the talent on like Tech. I mean, yeah, it's probably these 3 teams at the bottom. I think West Virginia finishes in front of Tech and Iowa State. I just did, and not that I have a super evidentially backed reason to love West Virginia, but this team just gives me the Huggins vibes where they're just a pain in the ass to play night in and night out, and they scrape a couple more wins than 2 other teams in the conference.
Yeah, they're an old ass team too. They're going to start 4 seniors, I think. Emmett Matthews is back. That's cool. For his second run at West Virginia after a stop at Washington. They get Trey Mitchell here, a guy who we like a lot. We talked about him when we talked about Texas. Weird ass season for him too. Was hurt, then couldn't play that much, then took a leave of absence. You remember that? And then
here's my rub with the one piece on this team is Trey Mitchell Chris Beardy's so mean to me. He doesn't play me. And he goes and plays for Bob Huggins?
Welcome,
brother.
Bob Huggins. Yeah.
Brother, what are you expecting over here? Like, okay, Eric Stevenson, South Carolina transfer, leaves Frank Martin. That makes sense. Okay?
Yeah.
Trey Mitchell not getting along with Chris Beard and moving to Bob Huggins, boy, I could see where Mitchell's right back in the fucking portal, like in the middle of the year. But it does at least give him a usable piece. Like, I don't think he's quite as good as O'Banner, but I think he's really close to being right there as kind of a similar one piece that you work around for a team.
Yeah. Do you think possibly why he chose West Virginia was because Huggins is like, all right, I'm going to start you and, we're going to build the offense around you. Because Bart Torvik has him playing 80% of minutes, highest on the team and the highest usage. I think if that's the case, if Torvik is right there, we're definitely going to be playing a lot of Trey Mitchell this year.
Yeah, Torvik usually sucks ass at usage, but I think Trey Mitchell having the highest usage is the optimal route to West Virginia being the most successful. Like, Kedrian Johnson is a Bob Huggins guy freaking through and through. Like that's perfect for him to have at the point. And we've seen this Huggins team more from press Virginia to slow to fast to outside shooting last year to, he'll figure out how to kind of make it work too. He's not all too dissimilar to Mark Adams in that sense in terms of, he'll make whatever pieces he has works. But Joe Toussaint, huh? What do we got with Joey T? I don't know if he's going to start. I think he's probably 6-man spark plug off the bench to spell one of Kedrian Johnson or Eric Stevenson, but a much different piece than the other guards in terms of being a downhill driver that they really don't seem to have on that team for the most part. So I think finds a nice usable role and much more effective than what he kind of showed. Not much more effective. I think he gets much more opportunity than what he was allotted at Iowa. And we probably see a little bit of a productivity increase, I would say.
Yeah, same. I'm warming up on this team as we're talking. I wrote that I didn't see a 32nd ranked team with this roster, but, I think they probably hang around, like the top 40-ish. Anything else on this before we go to our awards?
I don't think so. Let's get to the good part.
Yeah, so I'll go first. My all Big 12 first team is Mike Miles from TCU, Marquise Noel from Kansas State. I think that's the one that most people won't have. Adam Flagler from Baylor. I think I think he was the one that made it last. I think that he's the one that I could be talked off of. Timmy Allen from Texas, and then Conference Player of the Year, Jalen Wilson at Kansas. What do you got?
Well, he's the avatar. So Player of the Year, Mike Miles. He spurns the NBA draft.
Hell yeah.
He comes back to the best team TCU's had in a minute. He improves his three-point efficiency. His assist numbers go up because the role players are slightly a little bit more effective than they were last year. I think this is the perfect opportunity for Mike Miles to have his kind of coming out party. If you remember, he's one of the holdovers from that USA team who didn't go to the draft, right? So the draft guys were like Chet Holmgren, Jaden Ivey, Johnny Davis, Ben Mathurin. But all those guys, Johnny Davis and Mathurin in particular, took massive steps like last year. Miles didn't really take a step up. He kind of stepped up in some regards, went back in some. I think this is the year he kind of puts it all together. And keep an eye out while we're on the Team USA discussion of some other guys from that team who are still here. Caleb First.
Yep.
Pearson Ingram, Adam Miller. Just be mindful. Pretty much everybody on that team just
studs.
Yeah. Like even Patrick Baldwin got drafted. It's just a joke. So I got Player of the Year, Mike Miles. First team, I got Miles. I was kind of the same mindset of Flagler. It's like some people are so high on him in terms of being like a third-team All-American guy. I think he's a victim of the Baylor unselfishness, but I still think he's good enough for all conference. Then Noel, Jalen Wilson, and I put Cisse. I was back and forth between Cisse and Osuni.
Cisse, all right.
I was back and forth between Cisse and Osuni, but I think Cisse gets a few more minutes this year. They don't have quite the front court depth that they could fall back on last year, and I think Cisse just gets the better role. And then, old stinky Jalen Wilson. What do you know?
All right. So we'll do breakout guys next. Breakout guys kind of tough in this conference. We were talking earlier.
It wasn't even a discussion for me. Not even a thought.
What, for your top breakout guys?
Yep. So go to non-Frost newcomer.
Yeah. So
two-man discussion. Which one do you want?
I'll take Lampkin. Eddie Lampkin's going to smash this year.
Your breakout. Okay.
Yeah, breakout guy. So I think Lampkin's minutes tick up. I think he is going to explode on a team that we really, really like. That TCU team is going to be fun as hell the entire year. So my first breakout guy will be Lampkin.
Yeah, the breakout guy, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think it's clearly Dylan Dessou in this conference. Like, I think he's the only true guy that can sustain minutes at the 5 in the Big 12 for extended periods. And it was kind of crazy, just the knee operation that he underwent the previous year. He got started slow, and then he gets back midway through the season and gets thrown into a lineup that was already kind of half turmoiled. I mean, into the shitter. He gets a full bill of health. I mean, this guy decimated the SEC with a bunch of freaking computer engineers around him at Vanderbilt. Like,
that's what I was going to say, with a bunch of shit around him.
and now he's going to the Big 12, where there's a massive void of big men talent, partially because, again, a lot of these lineups are very pack line reliant. So I just think this is Dylan Dessou's opportunity. Like when I pointed out, shooting 37% from 3 at his size, I looked at that, I was like, holy shit. Maybe he's one of the better 3-point shooters on Texas, and why I think he has to have minutes in this offense or in this team this year. Yep.
Do you have any other breakout guys on your list?
Nope. It was a one-man discussion.
Yeah, I have 2 guys listed down lower. Moussa Cisse, I think, is a breakout guy, just because I think, like you said, his role expands here. And then also Bryce Thompson on Oklahoma State. I think the talent will come through, former 5-star guy. So I think that they're further down the list. What was the next thing that you wanted to do? Like
The
second year
newcomers.
guys?
I said the newcomers,
Oh, yeah.
non-Frosh newcomers was a 2-man discussion.
2-man discussion? I
2-man
have
discussion, non-Frosh newcomers. And you can't choose like McCuller, who went in, like transferred in conference. That doesn't count.
well, I have McCuller.
This is a Big 12 newcomer.
Big 12 newcomer. I think number one's got to be Grant Sherfield. Or
Osu.
Yeah. I mean, I have
we've down to those two guys pretty easily.
I have Bamasil written down too, just because
Bamasil's not even the best newcomer on his team. What do you mean?
This isn't, the list can be more than one guy.
It's Osu or Sherfield.
Yeah. I mean, those are just massive gets for those two teams. So yeah, that's all I have on the Pac-12. We found ourselves in the camp that Texas Tech is not going to be good. So I'm sure we'll watch this back after the season and laugh at ourselves. But anything else for the Big 12? Any wrap-up thoughts here?
It didn't feel good fading Lenny Hamilton last year.
It's true.
It don't feel good fading Mark Adams this year, but sometimes you just got to do it.
Well, I am on board. We nailed our Big 12 bold call last year, so we'll go back to back here. We will be back next week. We're doing the Big East and the Big 10 next week, 2 very fun conferences, and we're gonna have a guest on each of those shows. So as we get closer, we're gonna keep going with these previews. Thanks for joining me, Gavin. We will talk next week.
Roger.